Hey, good evening. Hope you're all doing well. Today we are learning Maseches Zevachim, Daf Tzadi Gimel Amud Beis. We're starting about 10 lines down at Iboyelehu. Mirza Hashem will get to the top of Tzadi Dalet Amud Beis. And as you can see, the next blot is much shorter, so we'll be able to catch up Thursday and Shabbos in Mirza Hashem so that we can be on pace for the week that is ahead of us. The Gemara says, Iboya lahu, bidam mahu. In regards to the blood, do we need the blood to have, the words are not here, but this is what the Rishonim write. Do we need a requisite shear in the kli in order for us to be chayiv kibus, to own kibus, if that blood gets on our clothes? We're on the top of Tzadi Gimel Amud Beis, 10 lines down. Do we say on the one hand, Hilchasahi, that we do have a halacha l'mosh misinai from the world of Mechatas? By the world of Mechatas, we know that we need a shear, but Hilchasalo gamrinan. But we can't extrapolate from Mechatas back over to Chatas dam, the dam Chatas. O Dilma, or perhaps is it the case that by the Mechatas that Hasam my time, it's not because of halacha l'mosh misinai, but rather Tichsiv taval b'mayim, and we assume that the letter Beis here, b'mayim, indicates that it needs to have a shear, hachanami, in our case, by the blood, ksiv taval badam. Do we say that we should be able to learn about whether or not there's a din of tone kibus by the kli, yes or no? Do we learn from dam? Do we learn that there's a requirement for a shear by the blood from the world of mechatas, yes or no? So the Gemara says, Tashma, da Amar of Zrika, Amar Abelazar, Af Bedam Lo Kiddush. Even when it comes to blood, it's not, you haven't crossed the threshold. In order to be Tone Kibbus, you need to make sure that you have the requisite amount of blood in the Kli. Otherwise, you are not going to be Tone Kibbus if you do get that blood on you. Omar Rava, Rava says, Tanya Nami Hachi is the appropriate text of the Gemara. The Gemara quotes a pasuk v'taval, that you have to dip your finger. This is talking about chatos pnimios, where we have to do hazah by finger. We have to do with be'etzba. So the Gemara says v'taval velo misafeg. You cannot get blood on your hand by wiping it from the side of the kli or from the mizbeach. You have to actually dip straight into the liquid. Another part of the pasuk is badam ad shehe badam shir tefila me'ikaro. This is the part of the brisa that we needed for our purposes to indicate that we need a shear me'ikaro. Otherwise, there will be no din of kibus. And then the drasha continues, min hadam shebe'inyan. And the way we understand these words is that it has to be that each hazah gets its own dip. Again, the words don't say this. Look in Rashi if you want to see the details. And we need all pieces of this drasha and the brisa. We need v'taval, we need bedam, and we need min hadam. V'isrich l'michtav bedam. Why? Because the ikasav rachmana v'taval, if the only language of the Torah was v'taval, havamina afalpi deleka shir tefillah meikara. I might have thought that if I only had the word v'taval and I didn't have the word bedam, so perhaps I might have thought that I don't need the requisite shir. So therefore, kasav rachmana bedam, to make sure we don't make that mistake, and we need a shear. A third of the way down. V'kasav rachmana bedam. If the Torah would have only said bedam and not v'toval, then havamina afilu mesafik. Then I would have thought that I could even get blood on my finger for hazah, for the chatas pnimis, by wiping it on the side. I'm trying to imagine, like if you have a mixing bowl and you're making something and there's oil on the side and you want to get the oil to drip back down. So you'll run your finger on the inside, but now look at your finger. Yeah, it has oil on it. So let's say just use the same exact thing for zrika. I wipe the inside of the bowl and I do my zrika. No good. Not allowed to do that. So therefore, we needed the word kasav rachmana v'taval, that misafik is not enough. You have to actually stick your finger into the liquid, not on the sides of the wall. And min hadam, which taught us shebe inyan lema'ute mai. We were afraid over there that we needed to have a different zrika for every, a different dip for every zrika. Amarav lema'ute shirayim shebe etzba. That teaches us that if after you do a zrika, you do a hazah with a finger, but there's still extra blood on the finger, you're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to use extra dam from zrika, from hazah number one, even though you still have blood on the finger. Let's say you did it softly, or let's say you had a lot of blood on your finger, so you dip literally your whole finger down to the top knuckle, and you do a zrika, and there's still plenty left, you're not allowed to do that. The Gemara says that this idea that Rava is highlighting that the shiraim shebe'etzba is problematic is misayeh Rebbe Lazar. The Amar Rebbe Lazar shiraim shebe'etzba psulin. He says explicitly that if there's extra blood on your finger after doing a hazah, so the din is that you're not allowed to do that. It's puzzle for the hazah. So it doesn't say in the Gemara, but you have to wipe off your finger between each one. Like, how do you do it? How exactly do you do it? If it's shiraim shebetz, but can you redip and that's enough? You have to clean off your finger. It doesn't say here in the Gemara. Almost halfway down, Amrle Ravin bar Rav Ada le Rav and possibly le Rava. Amr Talmidcha, your Talmud said something to you. Amar Rav Amram, what did he say? Tanina, we have a brisa, and this brisa is quite difficult to understand. On its face, the words aren't hard, but just getting the flow of the case is a little difficult. And the Gemara is going to pick up on that to bring a raya against Rebbe Lazar. Let's remember what Rebbe Lazar said before we start the brisa. Rebbe Lazar held shiraim shebe'etzba psulin, that if there was extra blood on one's finger after doing a hazah, that would be puzzle to do the next hazah. What does this brisa say? Hayamazeh. Let's say that a person was in the process of doing hazah of the chatas pnimius, anything in the pnimius that had needed a hazah. The nitza hazah miyado, and there's a splash, a little bit of a sprinkle of blood that comes off your hand. Ad shelo hiza, if it happened before you did the hazah ta'um kibus. Misha hiza, but once you did the hazah, ein ta'um kibus. Now, the reason this is difficult is because when the brisa opened, it said hayamaza v'nitze. It said hayamaza that you already were doing hazah. But a line later, it said, if ad shelo nitze. So which one is it? Did you do it or did you not? My love, isn't it the case at hachi kamar that ad shelo gomar milahazos ta'un kibus, that until you finish doing all of the hazos, then ta'un kibus. But if you say that, that's against Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer, let me tell you why. Rabbi Elazar was of the opinion that if you did one hazah, the extra blood on your finger was puzzle to do another hazah. What do we see in this brisa? It says, "Ad shelo gomar milahazos." If you're not yet done doing all of the hazos, then guess what? Ta'un kibus. Then that blood will cause for you to have to do laundry on your clothes, which implies that it's not puzzle, because blood that's puzzle doesn't cause for kibus. So that's a kasha in Rabbi Elazar. And let's finish up the explanation. And mishagamar lahazos ein ta'un kibus. And when you're done doing hazah, there is no kibus. So this brisa, the way we just understood it, within this frame of my lav hachi kamar, is a kasha and Rebbe Lazar who held shiraim shebe'etzbas psulin. Says the Gemara, no, lo hachi kamar. You misunderstood the brisa. It is hard to understand, granted, but you misunderstood it. So what does the Gemara mean? Ad shelo yatzisa hazah miyado. No, we're only talking about before the first hazah left your finger. Then ta'un kibus. You're not in the midst of multiple hazos. You're prior to the first hazah. Then I understand pasha. Then you're going to be ta'un kibus because that blood's not puzzle. You're perfectly poised to do hazah. The blood is tahor. You stuck your finger in the blood. You didn't wipe it off the sides, and you're ready to go. And then it drips on your clothes. Obviously, you're ta'un kibus in that case. Mishayatzisa zamiyado. But once the blood is in the air, even if it's just airborne to do the hazah, then if it falls on your clothes, ein ta'un kibus. So we tried to ask on Rebbe Lazar from this Mishnah, from this brisa, the brisa of Rebbe Amram, and we were not able to do so. Esvei Abaye. Abaye says, wait one second. I have a question from the world of Para Aduma. Says the Gemara, Gomar milahazos. If by the Para Aduma the hazos are all completed, what do? Mekaneach yado begufa shel para. You wipe your hand on the para itself. Just wipe your hand on the fur of the cow. Gomar in, lo gomar lo. That's only true if you were gomar, if you finished all of your hazos. But if lo gomar, if you didn't finish your hazos, then don't wipe your hand on the cow because obviously the blood's still not puzzle. Kasha again on Rebbe Lazar. Because what we see over here is that if you're still doing hazos, you don't wash off your hand, which means that extra blood on your finger is not problematic. Amar le, you misunderstood. Gomar, when you finish doing the hazos by the para aduma, mikaneach yodo begufo shel para, then you when you're done, you're allowed to wipe your hand on the animal. But lo gomar mikaneach etzbo, then you only wipe your finger because then you have to clean off your finger and start again, which implies exactly what Rabbi Lazar said, no longer a question, but in fact a proof. So says the Gemara, I don't understand. Bishlama Gamar, I could understand if you're totally done with the whole process of all the hazos. Mekaneach yadu begufa shel para. We know that it's reasonable for you to place your hand on the para with all the blood that's on your hand and wipe off your hand. Shene'emar, because the pasuk has an extra, seemingly extra word in it. The sarafis hapara le'enov. We're missing some of what we need to read here, so let's read it inside. Bamidbar Yud Tes Hey. Sarafis haparala einav es ora ve'es besara ve'es dama al pirsha yisro. So the Gemara says that you need to burn the para with its blood. Yeah, we all know there's blood inside a para. So why did you say the word dama? Must be that it's not the blood from the inside, but rather the blood that I wiped onto the para aduma after I finished my avoda. So that I understand, says the Gemara, back inside, right above the new Mishnah, Bishlama, 2/3 of the way down. I understand that if I finish doing all my hazos for the para aduma, that mekaneach yoda begufo shel para because of the pasuk. El etzbo b'may mekaneach. What are you wiping your individual finger on when you're trying to continue doing hazos? After all, if Rabbi Elazar is right that it's puzzle to use extras, you're not going to wipe your finger on the fur. It's going to get so dirty and hairy. You need your fingers more clean than that. It says the Gemara, you're right. Amar Abaye bisvas mizrak kidechsiv kipurezov. What you do is you take your finger that has blood on it and you kind of same thing that you would do with the kind of turn your finger multiple times, get all the blood off, and then go back into the middle and start over. And that's what the Gemara says you should do. So we tried to ask on Rabbi Lazar, couldn't find a good answer. It seems if we were poskim and we had to paskin from our Gemara, it would seem to be that we would say that extra blood on the finger is puzzle for hazai. You have to clean it off on the side of the bowl and then start over again. Says the new Mishnah, 3/4 of the way down on Tzadi Gimel Amud Beis. Nitazal ha'or. Let's say that the blood sprinkles onto leather. So ad shelo hufshat, before the leather is skinned off the animal, ein taun kibus. The halacha is that there would be no kibus because it's not yet a kli. It's not makabel tuma. Misha hufshat, but once the skin has been separated. So then that's regular leather. Therefore, town kibus to Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Elazar Omer, no. What's that?
Even if blood goes on the animal, it's not skin. After you skin,
No.
you have to put
If the blood goes on before you skin it, then it is not makabel tuma. There's no din of kibus there, even if you later skin it. And even if the blood went onto the skin after it was taken off, that's a machlokas tanoim. According to the Tanakama, mi shehufshad, Rabbi Yehuda holds town kibus. Rabbi Elazar Omer af mi shehufshad. He holds that if the blood went onto leather even after the animal was skinned, you're still not ready to use that. It's not a finished product. A finished product is when you go to the store and you have a leather jacket. That's a finished product. The fact that it was skinned doesn't yet make it a functional kli, and we're going to discuss this more in the Gemara. When we say, in fact, that there is a din of kibus, do you have to wash the whole garment or can you just spot clean? So the Mishnah says you can spot clean. Eino taun kibus ela makom hadam. Only in the spot where the blood is, that is what is required. The davar shu roi lekabel tuma, and it has to be an item that is roi lekabel tuma, and v'roi lekibus. We'll figure out what all these things mean in the Gemara. Echad ha-beged ve'echad ha-sak ve'echad ha-or. Whether it's a regular garment, let's say made out of cotton, or it's made out of sackcloth, like burlap, ve'echad ha-or, or something made out of leather, te'unin kibus. Ve'akibus b'makom kadosh. When you do the laundry, it has to be done in a holy place. Ushviras klicheres, which is a way to clean klicheres, is b'makom kadosh. Umriko shtifa b'klinichosh is b'makom kadosh. When we have to clean out a copper vessel, that also should be done b'makom kadosh. And zeh chomer bechatas mikache kachim. This is the uniqueness of the chumras by a chatas. All of these rules by the blood are unique to a chatas, even though they're not kache kachim. So says the Gemara, closing out the Mishnah. That brings us to the bottom of Tzadi Gimel Amud Beis at the Mishnah. at the Gemara, excuse me, let's jump right into some of the Mar Mekomos. Minani Mili, how do we know the halachos that we learned in our Mishnah? The Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis taught us in a brisa. The pasuk says beged. The whole pasuk says kol asher yigabiv sara yikdash, v'asher yizah midama al ha-beged, asher yizah alem techabes b'makom kadosh. If you get it on the clothing, it says techabes b'makom kadosh. So let's look at the drasha beged. Eni ela beged. Minayin lerabos or misha hofshat, at least according to Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda holds that once the leather has been taken off of the animal, once the leather has been stripped off, so then the halacha is that he holds that it's then subject to the din of kibus. How do we know that that's true? By or mishov shatam lomar asher yazalem techabes. So that's clear from the pasuk. Yochel shneimar be'or adshe lo hoshat. Maybe I would have thought that we would say that there's a din of kibus even mishalo hofshad, even if the leather is still, the hide is still attached to the animal. No. Talmud Omar beged, ma beged roy lekabel tuma, av kol haroy lekabel tuma divrei Rabbi Yehuda. This brisa says that according to Rabbi Yehuda, it needs to be something that's makabel tuma while the hide is still on the animal. Nothing to talk about. That's not makabel tuma. Rebbe Lazar Omer Beged, he has a very similar set of drashos, and then we're going to spend the top of Tzadi Dalet Amud Aleph trying to find out the difference between these two shitas. Let's see, because we just saw Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Elazar Omer Beged, Ein li ela Beged, minayin l'rabo sak v'chol minei begadim, turning to the top of Tzadi Dalet Amud Beis. How do we then know that we're able to include in the din of kibbutz something made out of sackcloth and something made out of other materials? So says the Gemara, Talmud Lomar, Asher Aleha Techabes, from the pasuk. That's how we know that there's a din of kibbutz on those items if they get blood on them. Yochel Shanimar Be'or Mishehuvsha. Maybe we would assume that we should include the animal after it's been skinned. Talmud Lomar Beged, Ma Beged Davar Mekabel Tuba, Av Kol Davar Mekabel Tuma. Now these drashas appear very, very similar. One difference between them that's clear is Misha Hovshat, but the drashos seem very similar. So my Beinaihu, says the Gemara, what would be a nafkamina between the two shitas other than the obvious of the skin that's Hovshat? So says the Gemara, answer number one, Amar Abaye matlis pchusa mishalosh. If you have a piece of clothing that's less than three tefachs by three tefachs, why is that a problem? Because that's not makabel tuma. It's too small of a garment. So that would be a difference. Ika beinahu man da amar ra'ui ha nami ra'ui de iboy chashiv alei. I could make it chashuv, right? Some people carry around very small garments, like I often have with me. These glasses cleaners are very small. That's very small. Let's assume that it was smaller than the shiur. But I'm machshav that thing. So if you're machshav something, so then you make it into a kli, even if it's small. So according to that, the Gemara says that manda amar ra'ui, for those who say that something needs to be ra'ui to be a kli, to become ton kibus, to have that din of kibus. So hanami roi, these eyeglasses cleaners cloth, even though it's small, but the ibay chashiv aleh, I made it chashuv. I made it into something real. So therefore, I could say that that's the case. But man da amar davar hamekabel tuma. But if you say it's not about ra'ui, it's about mekabel tuma, hamiha la bas kibule tumahi. It's too small. So it depends what you're looking at. The feature of one shita is ra'ui. The feature of the other shita is whether or not it's currently mekabel tuma. Not could it be in the future, but is it at the moment? The one that's future looking will say, I can turn anything into a davar chashuv and therefore subject to tuma. So the matlis that's bas shlosha could become tam. If you say we're looking at it basheru sham, so then no. Rava Amar Beged Shechishev Alel L'Tzuri Kabena. The difference between them is a garment that is fully made, but I'm not done with it. I'm planning on embroidering. I'm planning on adding some design. That's what L'Tzura means. So I remember back in the day they had these Ida crown jackets when we were in high school. So let's say you got the jacket, but it's bare. Your basketball number is not on it. Your name's not on it. The logo is not on it. So if your intention is to add more things to it, that's a nafkamina between these two tanoim. How so? Manda amar roi, hanami roi. What? It's jealousy. It's just straight up jealousy. You had those jackets in the issue. No, no, no. I did not.
The leather arm like
Yeah. Yeah. That was Ida Crown.
those were nuts.
Said Gornstein on the back. All the guys. I'm just jealous. People have feelings, Stan. Some people have feelings. So there, if your mindset is that this garment I haven't finished it yet, manda amar ra'oi, well, hanami rabbi, I could put it on right now. All I need to do is change my mind. Di'ibai mivata leila machshavte. The only reason this garment isn't considered finished is because I wanted to add something to it. So if we're in the ra'oi perspective, if I change my mind, the garment is ra'oi, so therefore it would be ta'on kibus. Masha'en kein man damar davar makabel tuma. But in my mind, hashtami Allah bas kibulu tumi, because right now that garment is not what I want, and therefore it's not subject to tuma. And it should say in the Gemara, Ika de Amre. And the reason we know that is because Rava said the previous comment too. So he can't say another one that doesn't make sense with the first one. So it says the Gemara, according to the does it say? Yeah, according to the Gilyon, we have in over here that Ikata Amri, Rava Amar, Utzva the Chashiva Lalakitza Ikebena. Utzva is a thick piece of leather. That's what Rashi says over here. Shtiach le'echol alav o lishkov alav ruban min haor. It was the kind of thing that they used to sit on, and it was a thicker piece of hide that would kind of function as a mat. So it's an utzva. And the chashivala lekitza. My intention was to cut it to round it out to make it a perfect shape, but right now it's kind of uncut and raw and unhewn, so it's just kind of an oddball shape. I'm not really done with it yet. Manda amar ra'oi hanami ru'uya. Well, the one who says I look at it according to what I can see in the future, it's totally fine and usable. Manda amar dabra makabel tuma halab makabel tuma adim mikatzale. No, it's not done till it's done. So three possible nafkaminas within the machlokas between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Lazar from our Mishnah and from the Brisa at the bottom of Tzadi Gimel Amud Beis. Tanya, this is Bini Chusa. That's what Rashi adds over here because we're bringing a raya to the same tune. Reb Shimon ben Menashe Omer Utzva Shechashav Lelakitza Tahora Ad Yaksiena. That he holds this way as well. That at least according to one of the shitas, that if you have this piece of leather and you wanted to cut it more, and therefore it's not yet done in your mind, it's tahora, meaning it's not mekabel tuma until you finish cutting it. Okay, what does ein taun kibus mean? Minani. How do we know that not everything requires kibus? Because the Tana Rabbana yachal nitaz al mixas beged hekola beged taun kibus. Maybe we should say that if I got a dot of blood on the hem, that the whole garment needs cleaning, even though that's not what the Mishnah said. How do we know that that's true? Tamalomar asher yazet lo amarti l'chel makom dam bilvad. The halacha is that it's only where the blood is and nowhere else. The Gemara continues about halfway down on Tzadi Dalad Amud Aleph, Davar Shu Roi Lekabel Tuma Stomach Rabbi Yehuda in regards to Roi, because look at the word, it's Roi, and that's what we just learned at the top of Tzadi Dalad Amud Aleph, that the nafkaminas between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Lazar is that Rabbi Yehuda was a Roi. He was just thinking with the mindset of what could be, not what is right now. So because our Mishnah says Davar Shu Roi Lekabel Tuma, we see that's lashon of Rabbi Yehuda. The Gemara says Roi Lekibus Lema'ute Kli. Wood does not fall into this. We're talking about a wood kli. Debar gredahi. How do you clean wood? Scratching, scraping, right? That's you don't clean it. I mean, we have hardwood floors that are shellacked, but the wood that they had, which was not, if there was a blemish in the wood, they would shave it down. We actually do that too sometimes in our floors where we shave it down. Fine. Echad beged ve'echad sak, says the Gemara, it's implied from this shita, lememra de'or bar kibusu. Really, the tzushta, the vachule of the Mishnah is what we're talking about, because it seems to imply that or is something that is in the category of bar kibus. But I'll prove to you, says the Gemara, that that's not true. Uraminhu, if you go back to Maseches Shabbos, hayisa alav lashleshes. If you had, let's say, the example here is a pillow of some kind, and it had something on it, mekancha bismartud. You use a dry cloth to clean it off. Or no sein aleha maim ad shetichle. If it was made of leather, so then the halacha is in Hilchos Shabbos, just pour water on it. What does that show you? That there's no isser of laundry with leather. This is Shabbos. You're allowed to pour water on leather. Isn't that laundry? Of a haraya, that there is no din libun, there is no din kibus when it comes to leather. Amar Abai lo kasha harabanan ha'acherim. This is actually a machlokes in regards to whether or not we hold that leather is a bar kibusu, whether or not it falls into the category of that which can be laundered from an Isser perspective on Shabbos. Ha-beged v'asak mechabso, ha-kli v'ha'or megarero. Look how the Tanakama draws the line. When it comes to sackcloth, when it comes to regular beged, it has a din of kibus. But kli and or are megarero. The halacha is, or megardo according to some, that it is scratched. And by the way, we relate to that. If I have a leather jacket and there's something on it, I can usually just scratch it off because it's somewhat impervious to absorbing things. It's not like plastic, but it's pretty good. If somebody spilled yogurt on my leather coat, it's very easy to clean. It's not like it absorbs so much. But so that's the distinction. Beged and sak is on the one side, and kli and or don't have a din of kibbutz on Shabbos. That means that in theory on Shabbos you could clean them. The Igros Moshe has a shaila about this, about whether or not we can clean our leather shoes. Remember that our leather that we have on our shoes is considered possibly soft leather compared to the hard leather that they're talking about, which we will get to shortly. And all that is the Tanakama. Two-thirds of the way down on Sadi Dalet Amid Aleph, the Gemara says, Acherim omrim, habeged ve'asak veha or. Look what he did. He put or in the first category. Mechabso. So this is where we see the machlokes Tanoim about whether or not leather is subject to kibus. According to the Tanakama, it is not. According to the Acherim, it is. Ve'akli megararo. Only when you're dealing with, let's say, wood, that's when you are megarer. That's when you scratch things off or shave things off in order to clean it. Keman Azlahada Amar Reb Chia bar Ashi, who, like whom is the following shita. Zimnin Sagin Hava Ka'imna Kamed Rav. Many times I was in front of Rav. V'shichshiche le misane b'maya. And he would clean off his shoes in water. Kiman, who is that like? That is kirabanan. That's like the sheet of the Rabbanan. Amar Rava umi ikalamando amar or la bar kibusu. Is that possible? Is there such a shita that says that leather is not a bar kibus? V'oksiv, we have a pasuk. Veha beged, o hashesi, o ha'erev, o kol kli ha'or asher techabes. How can you say it's not a bar kibus? The pasuk says the word or and the word kibus in the same pasuk. It must be that this pasuk that we just saw and the Mishnah that we learned is berachin, is with soft leather. And kipliki, the machlokas that we saw in the brisa between the Tanakama and Acherim must be bikashin. I'm going to give an example. I don't know if it's halachically correct, but it's probably correct. Let's say that you have a saddle for a horse that's made out of leather. Very, very, very hard leather relative to what we're used to. And then you have the leather of the seat in your car, or you have, my shoes are very, very, very soft leather. So that's kashin and rachin. So that's what the Gemara says is a distinction. When it comes to or, everyone agrees that it's bar kibbutz, and you're not allowed to clean soft leather. When it comes to kashin, that's when we have the machlokas as to whether or not it's a bar kibbutz. The Tanakama holds that it is not a bar kibbutz, and the Acherim hold that it is. Says the Gemara, "Ve'amar Rav Chaye Rav Chia Zimnin Sagin Havokim Nakame de Rav." Similar story. I saw Rav many times with Shichshiche Le Mesane B'Maya, Bekashin Ucherabanan, like we saw. And then the Gemara says that Rava recants. 4 lines ago, 10, 12 lines from the bottom, Rava had said that the Kra and Masnisim were talking about Berachin. He gave an ukimta on a pasuk that it was talking about soft leather. Says the Gemara, Hadar Amar Rava Lav Milsehi Da'amri. I disagree with my own words. I had said that when the Kra and Masnisin were saying what they were saying, it was talking about Berachin, that Pashat, that it's a bar kibbutz with soft leather. Now I'm backtracking. Lav Milsehi Damri. Neku Neima Le Lekra. That I can say what the pasuk was talking about, if it was talking about soft leather or if it was talking about hard leather. Nilo askina, and perhaps the Torah was dealing with bekli achslagia havoin mimedinas hayam. This is a particular type of leather that is boiled and is very hard. And his point is, I can't say that the pasuk's only talking about leather that's rach. Perhaps I can only say that we're talking about leather that's kosher, and therefore maybe it is a bar kibbutz. Elo amar Rava tsaras, we're talking about something different. When we are talking about leather, what we're talking about is leather that has tsaras on it. Kevin de magufe kaparcha, there, if there is tsaras, there is some assumption that it was an outgrowth of the leather, and therefore mechal chalalei, it does weaken the leather, umash v'larach. Okay, that's super ukimta, but we can't really tell what the pasuk is talking about. Amar Rava, Rava does continue and say, Ikashali, if in fact I do have a question, ha kashali, this is the question that I have. And we'll be stopping in just a handful of lines. The Gemara says, Kar muksasos, you have pillows and blankets, derachin, they're very soft. Vitznan, we have a Mishnah. Hayasa shel or, nosen ala mai matcha tichle. Now I have a question, because there the Mishnah says that you're allowed to add water to the leather. That implies that it's not a bar kibus. Ela amar Rava, this is a very important yesod. Kol kibus to lesle kiskus lo shma kibus. When you take leather, when you take anything, and you don't have it coupled with rubbing the garment against itself, it's not kibus. Now, we are not used to doing our laundry. We have machines that do our laundry for us. But every once in a while, we have a garment that says hand wash only. And every once in a while, we listen to that rule. And then you put it under hot water, you put a little bit of Tide in there, and you take the garment and you rub it on itself. That's kiskus. So says the Gemara, you can't bring a raya that if I put water on leather, that it's a bar kibus, because maybe the only time there is kibus is if there's kiskus. V'hada Amar Reb Chia bar Ashi Zimnin Sagin Hava Ka'imna Kame de Rabbi Shechile Bisane B'Maya. I saw that he was doing that, says the Gemara. Yeah, Shechshechin. He's allowed to just clean it with water, and this is a mistake. Aval Kiskus Lo. Aval Kiskus Lo. But it's not the case in regards to rubbing it. So if we were poskim, we would say even with our shoes, we could pour water on them. We just can't rub them. We just can't rub them to clean them. So let's stop right here. And then Amir Tashem, tomorrow night, we'll pick up from right here and we'll be able to catch up on quite a bit of ground. Hopefully, we'll get to the bottom of Tzadi Vav Amud Aleph or close to it, and then we'll pick up the rest on Shabbos. Wishing you all a beautiful night.